One thing that I think is really nice when you're learning how to use individual components or tools or anything like that is to learn how to use them independently from each other, right? Obviously, you know, if we were training a dog really well, right, and doing it in the proper way and all those types of things, we would blend all of this together, right? We would use positive reinforcement in addition to our negative reinforcement. We would know where to kind of shift back and forth between them so that we're making sure we're kind of keeping the dog as motivated as possible through the process. But I think that understanding independently the use of negative reinforcement is beneficial, so you can learn the timing as far as the clarity side of things, and then in addition to that, learn how to gauge motivation, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with him simply trying to teach this bed command with the e-collar, right? And we're gonna be using solely negative reinforcement for this, which is going to be the pressure on, pressure off. So what I'm gonna do here is I just wanna make sure that I can get him onto the bed here. There we go. So I'm just gonna use that negative reinforcement using the leash pressure a couple times, okay, to make sure that I can get him into position. Pretty good. Okay, we'll do one more. Okay. So obviously I can physically get him onto the position, so that's the thing with the e-collar. The e-collar doesn't have any sort of directional component to it, obviously. It doesn't say move this way, move this way, move this way. So you're almost always, when you're using negative reinforcement with your e-collar, gonna be conditioning it in conjunction with the leash to give that direction to it. So I'm gonna be starting super low. We'll be at a 2 right now, just for the sake of learning the timing and getting him acclimated to that sensation a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk up to the bed here, and then before I apply any pressure, I'm gonna make sure he's not getting onto the bed first. I'm gonna engage e-collar, help him on, and then the second forepaws get on, I'm gonna release that pressure, right? Okay, and I'm gonna do that a couple of times here. So e-collar on, releasing when he gets forepaws on. Okay, and there's no verbal command or anything, because if you remember a rule from last time, we're not naming something until we could very, very smoothly get the dog to do it. Okay, and usually I just ride with it at a low level for a while, right? I'm making sure the clarity is there. I'm giving him enough time to feel that sensation in conjunction with this position, and to confirm that I've done enough repetitions where he's clearly not listening to the sensation, not because he's confused by it, but because he's not motivated by it before I start increasing. Okay? So I do a lot of repetitions at a low level. Okay? Good. And that's what I want to start to see, is that he's starting to predict that sensation and do it on his own. Okay? Okay, now another common thing we talked about last time was the concept of overshadowing, right? So if you notice, as I'm using these different types of pressure, I'm always doing e-collar pressure, then leash pressure, right? And the reason for that is because I need to be able to see when he's responding to the e-collar pressure over the leash pressure, right? Okay. That's what starts to condition into him that this means the same thing as this, right? No different than we would condition in a mark, right? This mark means this, okay? So we always put our new sensation at the beginning of the sequence. Okay? Very good. Okay, I'm gonna do 2 more. Very good. Okay. Nice. Okay. Very good. So our gauge here that we're using is he starting to figure it out, right? Because if our negative reinforcement clarity is good and he's motivated enough by the sensation, realistically after enough repetitions, he should start to figure out what it is we want, which he is, which tells me that my clarity is good. And for right now, the 2 is motivating enough for this amount of distraction, right? Okay. So I'm gonna have you do this next. I'll do one more repetition here. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna walk up to the bed, stop about 2 feet away from it. If he does not get on, you're gonna engage your e-collar, help on with the leash, release it the second 4 paws get on, right? Okay. Give you that, give you that. Come on, Hazy. Give it a whirl. Very good. Perfect. Good timing with that. Very good. Now, typically speaking, right, if I were training this dog in a session or something, I would start adding some rewards in at this point. But as you're learning how to do this, here's the potential issue you could run into by adding rewards in the learning stages. Let's say the clarity is good, but the motivation isn't. He doesn't care about the sensation. I could do this 15 times, and if I'm rewarding him every time he does it, at some point the positive reinforcement is gonna kick in over the negative reinforcement, and he'll be learning it, but not because we had good negative reinforcement. Does that make sense?
Yes. And that clears up a lot of...
Yes.
I was immediately
Yeah.
bringing in positive thinking.
And listen, it's fine, it's not a problem, right? Like if I could lean into positive reinforcement, that's fantastic, but for the sake of understanding how to use negative reinforcement, right, we have to learn how to use it independently without that kind of fog. Very good. And again, you see how we're using this to teach a behavior, right? It's a reinforcement, meaning the more we use it, the more it's telling him bed is good. Being on bed is good, which is why he's choosing to go to it on his own, right? Clarity is still good. Your timing is excellent, but you can tell he's not as motivated by the sensation at this point. And that's normal. A lot of times you can get away with a low level initially because it's so new to the dog, right? But then as they realize, I mean, a 2 is literally like nothing, right? As they realize that that 2 is just, it's just there, they stop caring about it so much. So we're gonna start gradually increasing here. Let's go to about a 4 and then do the same process. And then every time I make an increase like that, I usually try to do a handful of repetitions before I increase again. So we'll do maybe 4 more reps, see how he does. If it still seems like he's still pretty distracted by stuff, we'll increase again. Perfect. Let's do 2 more of those. Actually, motivation seems pretty good right now, so we're just gonna keep at it here. Very good. Awesome. Nice. Let's see if we get one more good one.
Okay.
That's pretty darn good. All right, go ahead and release them off.
Okay.
Okay, so now we move to the next step, just like we did last time, which is we have a behavior now solidified. We could fairly easily get him into it. In most cases, he's doing it on his own. So we can begin to name this now, right?
No.
So you're gonna do the same exact process now, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna walk up to the bed, and when you stop, you're gonna say bed. So we're conditioning in our cue, right? We're saying bed, waiting a couple seconds. If he doesn't do it, we're using our negative reinforcement to then get him onto the bed. So our new sensation we're trying to condition now, because we conditioned the e-collar, right? Our new sensation that we're trying to condition is the verbal. So that would come first in the sequence, then it would go back in line of what it was before, which is then e-collar, then leash if we need it.
Bed.
Excellent. And that is literally how you teach a command with negative reinforcement. You know what I mean? Like that's the process, that's how it works. And the only variable would be if he was more distracted, as long as your timing was good, the motivation would just need to continue to go up to meet it, right? That's the only difference. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep using the negative reinforcement to teach all this, but we're gonna start adding the stay into this. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take him up, right? You're gonna give your bed command. If he does it, great. If he doesn't, you're using your negative reinforcement with the e-collar to enforce it. Then you're gonna start walking around holding the leash. And if he steps off, we're just engaging e-collar, getting him back on. We're not repeating any commands or anything. Okay. Very good. Looks awesome.
Okay. Bed.
Let's try two more like that.
Bed.
It's awesome.
Okay. Bed.
Perfect. Very good. Awesome. Okay, so what we're gonna do next here is you're gonna get him on the bed and you're gonna drop your leash and walk away. Same deal, if at any point he steps off, you're engaging e-collar, then going right back and getting him back onto that bed.
Okay. Bed.
Pretty good. Why don't you do one more of those? Now, obviously, he's doing really well with it right now, so some of the additional distractions stuff are fine, but let's say this were a new dog, this is a client's dog, something like that. Don't get super wild with the distractions initially. Yeah.
I was just hoping for an experience to
Yeah.
try it. Just
Sure.
He is used to his bed, but
So if you've ever heard, right, I don't remember, they probably talked about this in the Michael Ellis DVD, the 3 Ds that we work through, right? So distance, duration, distractions, right? You really only want to emphasize one of those at a time. So if we looked at what we're doing right now, so by adding and dropping the leash, technically what we're doing is we're adding distance. So I wouldn't necessarily add distance plus a distraction at the same time. I would proof that distance, I would get that rock solid, then once the distance was good, I would move on to the distraction then at that point, right? Distraction being out of sight, gestures, quick movements, things like that.
Okay.
Okay, last thing I want to see you do is we're going to now generalize everything we just did on this bed to this bed. So that means we need to start from piece number 1 again, which is going to be no verbal command, just the negative reinforcement conditioning in this bed. Then we would move on to verbal command. Then we would move on to duration holding the leash. Then we would move on to distance dropping the leash. Perfect. So we'll do one more with no command, making sure that he's got it, and then we'll add command in.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, we'll do verbal command next. So again, our prerequisite for beginning verbal command is we just need to make sure we can easily get the dog to do it.
Okay. Bed. Bed.
Very good.
Bed.
Wrong word. All right, we're going to add in the distance next.
Bed. Bed. Okay.
And we'll do one more of those.
Come. Bed. Okay.
Not too shabby. All right, last thing I want to see you do here is we're going to start adding the positive reinforcement back into this also. So you're going to do everything exactly how you did, but when he does it correctly, you could add in your yes terminal marker into it to release him off.
Bed. Yes.
He doesn't like chasing it.
That's all right. You could kind of use the leash and your motion to entice him off, right? There we go, perfect.
bed, yes,
Perfect. You do 2 more of those.
bed, yes,
Nice. Let's do 1 more. Pretty motivated dog. Looks good. I mean, he picked all this up very well.
bed,
Now, he's a really good dog to learn a lot of this stuff with for 2 reasons. 1, he's got great motivation. 2, given the fact that he's such a short-haired dog, you don't run any risk of contact issues with your e-collar, right? You know he's feeling it, right? Because it's always, they have such thin fur, obviously. Where this gets tricky sometimes is when you're working with some really thick-coated dogs and stuff. Might be a little inconsistent with it, because that will affect your clarity. You know what I mean? If it's hitting in and out, in and out, in and out, the on-off of it is not going to be as clear to the dog.
Right.
So that's where you get into certain dogs. They have like different types of contact points and stuff like that to help combat that. But that's where things start to get more challenging, is as you're working with some dogs that are much harder to visually see how they're feeling the sensation,
Right.
you know?
And that was something I did run into. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'd be like,
Yeah.
I'm on 12, and
Sure.
he's like crying, and then I'd bring him in here,
Yeah.
and then he'd be at 35 and not feel anything.
Yeah. Now, some of it too, like some dogs are just very, very inconsistent about how intensely they feel it. So he might actually be getting a good contact. It has nothing to do with the contact, but just situationally, his pain threshold just goes up and down so much.
Yeah.
You know, challenging. He's, like I said, a very good dog because he seems extremely consistent in how he responds to the sensation.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, that looks awesome. He did really good with all that. That was, like I said, crash course into negative reinforcement. Answer some of the questions as far as your negative reinforcement you were using with the leash and why it wasn't working. Your timing was good. Motivation he didn't care about, obviously.